Year 10 and 11, welcome to your revision for the AQA English Language Paper 2 exam, and this video will be focusing on question 3 of the reading section. The structure of the paper is as follows. You have 1 hour and 45 minutes, and this includes 15 minutes reading time. Section A is the reading section. You have 40 marks up for grabs there, which is 25% of the qualification. And it goes through 4 questions, and the marks go up for 8, 12, and then 16. And then section B is your writing paper. Again, 40 marks up for grabs, 25% of the qualification. Assessment objectives are as follows. The first assessment objective is identify and interpret explicit and implicit information and ideas. Select and synthesize evidence from different texts. On paper 2, that assessment objective is for question 1 and question 2. So make sure you go back and watch my videos for those questions. Assessment objective 2, and that is what we need today. So this is what we need to focus on in our video today and our skills. Explain, comment on and analyse how writers use language and structure to achieve effects and influence readers using relevant subject terminology to support your views. It's key here, guys, because it asks for the relevant subject terminology, and that is why this question is so hard. Not only do we need to know the relevant subject terminology, and by that I mean simile, metaphor, noun, adjective, verb, adverb, etc., but we also have to explain the effect of language and structure on the reader. So how is the reader affected by the word choice or by the language devices used? The final assessment objective that is associated with the reading paper is this: compare writers' ideas and perspectives, as well as how these are conveyed across 2 or more texts. And that is the comparison question, and that is the last question on the reading section. We won't be focusing on that today, but there's the objective just so you know it. We are focusing on assessment objective 2. The marks awarded are as follows. Assessment objective 1 applies to question 1 and 2, which is your true and false statements, and you're writing a summary of the differences. Assessment objective 2, which is our focus on this video, is 12 marks. How does the writer's use of language? And then assessment objective 3, another big question, is for 16 marks, and that is the comparison question. So we are looking at a 12-mark question today. A quick reminder of what is included in this exam is that you are given 2 texts. Both are non-fiction. As I've said on my other videos, you can prepare for this exam by reading articles and journals and diaries. And the articles that you are given, or the texts you are given, are linked by topic, and it's usually a topic that has changed over time. The example I've put there is feminism, but obviously there's many more topics that have changed over time. The reason they pick a topic like this is because the 2 texts are from different centuries. You have your pre-19th century text and your more modern text. The pre-19th century text is probably going to be the trickier one due to vocabulary and potentially the language used. Today we are going to look at a language question, and we're going to look at a section from Anne Frank's diary. Now, this diary entry I have included on the first 2 videos. Remember, as we go, we are focusing on the writer's language. Okay? Before we have a look at the Anne Frank question in detail, we'll just have a look at some quick revision in terms of language terminology, just to make sure that you've got an understanding of things we might comment on and that our understanding of the terms is correct. So your first term then is noun. A noun is very simple. It is a naming word. Usually applies to people, so your name, my name, people's names. Also the names of places, London, France, Newcastle. And also the names of things, objects we can touch, table, chair, computer, television. So noun is straightforward. After noun, we look at adjective. Adjective, again, should be straightforward. It's a describing word. It is a word that describes something. I have a quick test for that, which sounds very immature but works. The dog. Any adjective will go inside of there. So the big dog, the hairy dog, the fluffy dog, the sad dog, the emotional dog, the uncomfortable dog. So if you remember that quick test, you can test yourself when you're reading something if you are unsure whether or not it is an adjective. And it will go in there, the fearful dog, the angry dog, etc., etc. So an adjective is a describing word, and that very childish test will help you with that. Verb, again, we learn this when we're young. It is a word used to show that an action is taking place. Again, my quick test then is that it will follow to run, to swim, to run, to swim, to jump, to speak, to talk, to laugh, to giggle. And that again is a quick test for a verb if you're unsure what the action is in the sentence. Okay, so a word used to show that an action is taking place. Your quick test is that it will follow the word to. Okay. If we move to pronoun, a pronoun then substitutes for a noun. So you can substitute a noun for a pronoun. I've put a list there. You've got quite a lot. You've got I, you, them, ours, it, who, which, anybody, myself, her, he, she, me. A lot of pronouns you can substitute for your name, as you can see on that list there. So if you can substitute it in for your name, then it is likely to be a pronoun. Again, revise those. In diary entries and autobiographical accounts, you're probably going to have the pronoun I because it is from their perspective. So think about commenting on that. Adverb is a word that modifies a verb or a sentence. So if we want to add more detail to the verb, i.e. the action, we would add an adverb. Now I've just put a couple of examples there. Happily, frankly, emotionally, very. A lot, but not all, a lot of adverbs will end ly. But be careful there because a word like lonely is going to be an adjective if we do our test. The lonely dog. So think very carefully about adverbs. Again, it should be, as I've just said, modifying or adding extra detail to a verb. She sang happily. So sang is your verb, happily is your adverb. She spoke frankly. Spoke is your verb, frankly is your adverb. Okay, so it modifies and adds more detail to your verb, to your action. Many will end ly. This is arguably one of the hardest ones, the abstract noun. It is something with which a human cannot physically interact in the sense that it's not physically there. You can't touch it. You can't see it. So what I'm going to bring up now is examples of abstract nouns and examples of verbs that people confuse as abstract nouns, just to give you a bit more detail. Abstract nouns are usually emotions, but we've got to be very careful because emotions can also be verbs. I'm going to show you what I mean on the next little slide. Examples are as follows then. So, if the sentence says, I love my husband, then this is a verb. Love is a verb because it's the action that is taking place, that the person is loving somebody. Now, if you said, send them my love, or love is in the air, then it is an abstract noun because it exists beyond our five senses. We can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't hear it, etc. Okay? Another example of that. Sarah could taste cilantro in the salsa. Taste is an auxiliary verb here because it illustrates the action. She can physically taste the salsa. Now, if the sentence had said, Sarah has great taste in clothes, then that is an abstract noun because it's not actually happening. Okay? Examples of abstract noun might be things like confusion, bewilderment, things like that. So be careful that you are not confusing a verb with it. Ask yourself what is the action that is taking place. Abstract noun takes a lot of practice, so don't beat yourself up if you don't get it immediately. Okay. Simile should be straightforward because you should have been being taught that every year really in English. It's something that is taught quite often, and it is the comparison of two things using like or as. I need not go into more detail there because you probably know it. So we will move straight to metaphor, which is slightly harder. Metaphor, then, we don't have like or as because it is more of a direct comparison. It's something that's more subtle, and it's the comparison of two things that you can't literally apply something to. So, for example, very simply, if you said, the snow is a blanket, you are directly comparing the snow to a blanket. So a metaphor removes like or as and directly says that something is something else. So again, we have to look very carefully for metaphor because it's not as obvious as simile. Personification then is when we attribute human qualities to objects or abstract notions. So when we give objects and these abstract ideas human characteristics, a very cliched one is when people write the wind whistled. Yeah, people whistle, the wind doesn't. So that's a very obvious one. Or the trees danced in the breeze. Again, cliched, but still a very clear idea of what personification is. Emotive language speaks for itself. It's language that provokes an emotion from the reader or is an emotion that the narrator is feeling themselves. So that there is straightforward. We might also come across facts. Again, straightforward, something that can be proven to be true. After fact, naturally comes opinion. We might hear opinion. We might hear expert opinion about something. A huge favourite of a lot of students is rhetorical question. It's easy to spot. Again, I don't really need to explain it, but very quickly, it's a question that doesn't require an answer and therefore, again, provokes a response from the reader. So those are your main devices, I think. Remember to go back and check that you understand all of these terms because these essentially are what we're going to have to be identifying and, more importantly, commenting on, especially in this question when it is solely based on language. I shall bring up the question and the extract and then we'll have a look at how we might answer it. So before I bring up the extract, have this question in mind. How does Anne Frank use language to present her experiences for 12 marks? You want to be spending around 15 minutes on this question. Okay, it is 12 marks. It is one of the higher mark questions. Question 4, which follows this obviously, is for 16 marks. We have to have a concise answer here. And we know because of the assessment objective, we need the right subject terminology where possible and to explain the influence on the reader. I shall bring up the extract and then we'll look at how to answer. It's proven very difficult to get the quality of this picture on the slide to be decent. So what I'll do is I'll just put each paragraph on. It'll make it a lot easier for you to read. So if you pause the video here, This is the first excerpt from her diary. This is your first paragraph. As you pause the video and read, think about the question. How does she use language to present her experiences? The next slide will be paragraph 2. This is paragraph 2 of the diary entry. Again, please pause the video, read it carefully, look for your language devices, the effect on the reader. Paragraph 3 is as follows, quite a short one. As I say, I know this is repetitive, read carefully, look for any key language devices, how they present her experience, and the effect on the reader. There's only one more paragraph left, which I shall bring up now. Please make sure you are pausing the video. And lastly, paragraph 4. Read it very carefully, pausing the video where necessary. I know this is repetitive. Any key language devices, how they present her experience, what is the effect on the reader. What I thought would make sense is to pick out 6, because if we're thinking of 12 marks, if we do 6 language devices with explanation, that seems to be mathematically sensible. Now, wait a minute. That is based on your explanation of the language devices being detailed. Now, we can be sensible here. If you know your explanation of language devices isn't very good, then you might use a few more examples. You might use 7 or 8. If you are someone that is very good at English and can explain language in depth, the effect of language in depth, then you won't need as many quotations because your detail will come in the explanation. So please use your common sense to determine how many quotations you need. But as a ballpark, I would go for 6. Everybody go for 6. And if you feel like in the exam this is not going to plan, try and overcompensate with a couple of more quotations. But remember, we've only got 15 minutes about on this question, so we have to be very, very quick here with what we're doing. Now, what I've done is I've just picked out the most obvious devices, just as practice for revision. Now, if we look back at the extract, then the repetition of Jews were forbidden is huge, isn't it? Because she says that quite a few times in succession. I've also picked out all of the emotive language that she uses, and there's quite a lot. I've only picked out 2 there, but there is more. So I've picked out dismal and depressing, but she also talks about fear, and that is a huge piece of emotive language when we're dealing with Anne Frank and the Jews, the Nazis. She also says that she was shaking. In that instance, shaking is also emotive because she's petrified of what could possibly happen if the Nazi military find her. So emotive language in the diary of Anne Frank is huge. The chances are, guys, if you get a diary entry or a clip from an autobiography, like something like, I know a lot of you will have done Touching the Void, the chances are it will have emotive language because this is somebody's experiences. Again, straightforward device is the simile. It's like the slave hunts of the olden days, comparing what she's going through to slaves. Again, when we look at how to analyse, that it seems to be straightforward. And if we're talking about influence on the reader, then naturally it provokes a feeling of sympathy. When we think about slaves and what slaves experienced, we naturally feel sympathy towards them for having to go through such awful, torturous times, and therefore by comparing herself to a slave, As a reader, not only do we feel sympathetic, but we also know that she is trapped and can't escape. And that in this instance, in this simile, the Nazi soldiers become the master who owns and tortures the slave. So there's a lot of imagery happening there. Again, straightforward metaphor I've picked. I think of close friends who are now at the mercy of the cruelest monsters ever to stalk the earth. And your comparison there is the Nazi soldiers are monsters. Again, if we're talking about influence on reader, we're going to look at the word monster in more depth. The connotation of the word monster is something to be feared, isn't it? And it's something that doesn't actually exist. A monster is not really alive, and therefore that makes it all the more harrowing for the reader who are disturbed at the behaviour of human beings such as the Germans. Again, if you wanted to go further there for your A and your A star, look at the word stalk. Stalk the earth. It's very predatory. It's very frightening, as if they're being hunted. We also have the repetition of the adjective impossible. Remember the quick test for that, the impossible dog, the impossible journey, etc., etc. Again, we're going to be thinking about why that adjective is repeated. I brought up some more emotive language, scared and frightening, because I think, considering we're looking at Anne Frank and what she experienced, emotion is one of the key things that she expresses here. Now, on the bottom for your revision, I've put any other suggestions. So that means that anything that you have found that I haven't mentioned, because by no means have I picked out everything. I've just tried to be quite quick. Excuse me, sorry. You could possibly even pick out the repetition of the word Jews, because she does it quite a lot in the opening paragraph. Jews were forbidden, Jews done this, Jews are forbidden to do that, Jews. And we have this compilation of an image of a religion who is being thwarted. Yeah, so you could have picked that out. Because the objective also asks about structure, you could have mentioned the short, simple sentence, I feel terrible. Again, something very simple to comment on. You could have even mentioned the word Hitler, actually, if you wanted to mention a single noun and what that has connotations of, especially in modern day society. What does the word Hitler symbolise? You could pick that out as well. As I said earlier, my hand's still shaking. So there's quite a lot here to pick out. I've just picked out the most obvious ones to show you that we don't necessarily need to make this question more difficult than it already is. I'm going to show you an example response that I've written. It's by no means finished. What I've done is I've just done an analysis of 3 quotations to show you how to do it. And I've colour coordinated it to try and make the answer more clear in terms of what's expected. So this is what I would have said. So your colour coordination goes as follows. The language terminology is in blue. The quotations are in yellow. The reader's response is red. And your simple connectives to connect our paragraphs together are in green. I tend to teach my students to answer the questions in their first sentence. So it depends how you've been taught. But remember, we need to answer the question about how she presents her experience. So I do that in the first sentence and then naturally back that up throughout my answer. So we could have written, Anne Frank uses language to present her experiences as distressing, especially for a young girl. The repetition of Jews were forbidden emphasises the restrictions placed on the Jewish people during World War II. But more importantly, the adjective forbidden creates a more sinister tone, and the reader feels compassion for the Jewish community who were oppressed by the German military. Additionally, Anne Frank likens the experiences of the Jewish people to that of slaves. It's like the slave hunts of the olden days. The use of this simile allows the reader to visualise the extent of the trauma Frank faces. The image of a slave provides the reader with a notion not only of someone trapped, but of someone tortured physically and mentally. Naturally, this raises a feeling of sympathy from the reader. Furthermore, Frank goes on to compare the Nazis to monsters. When she uses the metaphor, I think of close friends who are now at the mercy of the cruelest monsters ever to stalk the earth. As a reader, the noun monster has connotations of something daunting in size, and perhaps more harrowing is the idea that a monster is something mythical and imaginary. This comparison not only reminds the reader that this is the account of an innocent child, but it also stresses the horror of the events being described, so much so that the people responsible have lost their humanity. If I had carried on there, I would have mentioned the word stalk in that quotation because, as I said earlier, it is quite unsettling. It makes the reader feel uncomfortable. So that there is what I would class as half of my answer. Again, look, you've got your terminology, you've got your quotation, you've got the reader's response, you've got how Anne Frank's experience is presented. To revise for this exam, go over terminology. Noun, can you spot them? Adjectives, verbs, adverbs, and the big one, abstract noun. Can you spot them? And more importantly, can you write about them? You are the reader. How do you respond? Now, for those people watching the video who perhaps English is not a strength, and you know you're never going to learn all this terminology, it is acceptable for the C grade, for the number 4 and the number 5 grade, for you to use the word So, for instance, instead of putting at the top there, the adjective forbidden creates a sinister tone, you could write the word forbidden creates the word slave makes the reader the word monster. If you haven't got the right terminology, because as long as you explain the response on the reader, that should be good enough for your 4, for your 5, what would be your C grade. But as I say, if you are looking at a number 6, a number 7, a number 8, and a number 9, your terminology must be on point. It must be accurate. Okay? I hope this video has been useful. I hope that you understand that on AQA English Language Paper 2, question 3 is solely focused on your ability to analyse language and explain how it influences the reader. If you do need any more of my videos, please just type my name into YouTube, which is Stacey Ray, S-T-A-C-E-Y, and Ray is R-E-A-Y. The videos for question 1 and question 2 are obviously there to watch before this one. And good luck in your AQA English Language exam.